Okay. Greetings to you all. I'm Dr. Wes Borucki, and very honored to be back here with the Florida Atlantic University Lifelong Learning Society here in Jupiter to teach another course with you. Of course, in my classes, I've taken a chronological approach to American history. I've done the antebellum South with you, the Civil War, Reconstruction, the populist and progressive movements, and now we're going to continue on that grand tapestry that is American history, looking at the 1920s and 1930s in a class called Boom and Bust that will meet beginning Monday, January 13th of 2014 at 9 a.m. It'll run for 4 weeks. We won't meet on January 20th, Martin Luther King Day celebration, but we'll continue on Monday, January 27th and into the first 2 Mondays of February. The title, Boom and Bust, hardly original, but it does capture the conflicting attitudes, or the contrasting attitudes, I guess I should say, of the 1920s and 1930s. Not only attitudes about the economy, but just in the collective national psyche in general as the Great Depression took its toll on our country. And we're going to continue to look at the popular culture as well as part of the course. And of course the 1920s, as chronicler of the time, Fred Allen, said it was an age of ballyhoo. And we're going to look at some of the popular culture figures who rose to prominence in the 1920s. Of course, it was the decade when radio came into prominence commercially, with KDKA Pittsburgh taking to the airwaves in 1920, and by 1927 the National Broadcasting Company, NBC, became the first national network. And so figures could become larger than life, and great events could become very close to home, seemingly. So we're going to look at sports figures, just as an example. Every sport seemed to have a hero who was larger than life, like George Herman Ruth, the Sultan of Swat, the Babe in baseball, or Red Grange in football, the Galloping Ghost as he was known, from the University of Illinois, winning the first MVP award in the Big Ten Conference in 1924, and of course then going on to Chicago in the Young National Football League at that point. Tennis had Bill Tilden. Golf had great stars like Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen. So we'll look at them. It was also a time in that age of ballyhoo, everybody tried to be the first at something, and like the great aviators, like Charles Lindbergh going across the Atlantic. And we won't forget the ladies, like Amelia Earhart as well, who certainly was part of a daring generation of individuals as well. We'll continue on from that point to look at some of the great trials that, thanks to the media, captured the national imagination. We think of, in our own time, ever since the O.J. Simpson case in the mid-1990s, trials that captured the popular imagination. Well, the same thing happened with the growth of national media in the 1920s. Certainly the cases of Sacco and Vanzetti in Massachusetts, the Scopes trial in Tennessee in 1923, just as a couple of examples. Also the case of Leopold and Loeb. These are cases that are pretty important. Even Clarence Darrow, one of the best known attorneys of the age, took part in them. And also, we'll also look at a case that tells us a lot about the civil rights movement at the time and race relations, the case of the Scottsboro Boys, as they were known, from northern Alabama, which arguably could have been the greatest miscarriage of justice that we've had in American history, especially in a case involving multiple defendants. So we'll look at that. Then we'll take a look at, of course, that event that left an indelible imprint on society and politics in the 1930s and the way that we're governed even today, the Great Depression. And in week 3 of the course, we'll analyze the causes of the Great Depression. What caused it? So often when you see documentaries, they'll look at the 1929 stock market crash as a cause of it, but was it more like a symptom? It really was kind of the spark of it, and of course a spark has to ignite something. Well, we'll look at what those somethings are. There were greater underlying factors, and certainly there were fissures in the American economy, though it was known for its greater prosperity in the 1920s. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt himself tended to look at it as an American problem as opposed opposed to a world problem. Well, was he right? And we'll take a look at his diagnosis. And then, when we get into the final week of the course, we will look at the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who, of course, rose to prominence. He had been the Democrats' nominee for vice president going back to 1920. But when he became governor of New York by the end of the 1920s, his state of New York seemed to be doing a little bit better than most during the Depression. And he did a lot, no doubt, to allay the fears in the short term of the Great Depression when he took office in 1933, and he provided a lot of relief. But we'll look at in the long term, what was the legacy of the New Deal? Was it a blessing or a curse? Did it help some groups more than others? And these are questions that we can talk about together and we can discuss. So come on in. I think it'll be a lot of fun. Just come on in, relax, bring a coffee. We'll talk history. What could be better? And I look forward to seeing you beginning Monday, January 13th of 2014. So God bless and thank you again.